The screeching of tires and the sickening crunch of metal filled my ears as the world spun around me. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. "Rachel, Rachel, can you hear me?" Mark's voice sounded distant, muffled by the ringing in my ears. I tried to respond, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. The taste of copper filled my senses as I struggled to focus on my husband's face, blurred and distorted through the cracked windshield. "Help is on the way, honey. Just stay with me, okay?" The next few hours passed in a haze of sirens, bright lights, and urgent voices. When I finally regained full consciousness, I found myself in a sterile hospital room, my body a patchwork of bandages and tubes. "Oh, thank God!" Leah, my daughter, exclaimed as she noticed my eyes flutter open. "Mom's awake!" Caleb, my son, rushed to my bedside, his face etched with worry. "How are you feeling, Mom?" I tried to speak, but my throat felt like sandpaper. Mark appeared with a cup of water, gently helping me take a sip. "Easy does it, Rachel," he said softly. "The doctor said you've got a long road ahead of you." As the fog in my mind began to clear, the reality of my situation sank in. Multiple fractures, internal injuries, and a severe concussion. The list seemed endless. The thought of the recovery process ahead made my head spin. "How long have I been here?" I managed to croak out. 3 days, Mark replied, his hand resting on mine. "The kids and I have been taking turns staying with you." I felt a rush of gratitude for my family's support, but it was quickly overshadowed by a gnawing worry. What about work? The bills? Mark's expression tightened for a moment before he forced a smile. "Don't you worry about any of that right now. You just focus on getting better." The following weeks blurred together in a haze of pain medication, physical therapy, and frustration. As I slowly regained my strength, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mark seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone and disappearing for long stretches of time. One afternoon, as I was sorting through a pile of mail that had accumulated during my hospital stay, I came across a bill that made my blood run cold. It was from a collection agency, demanding payment for a sum that made my eyes water. "Mark?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Can you come here for a second?" He appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "What is it, honey?" I held up the bill, my hand shaking. "What is this? Where did this come from?" Mark's eyes darted around the room, refusing to meet mine. It's nothing. Just a mistake. I'll take care of it." But as I looked closer at the pile of envelopes, I saw more bills, more demands for payment. The pieces started to fall into place, and a cold dread settled in my stomach. "Mark," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what have you done?" He slumped against the doorframe, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I didn't want you to find out like this." As the truth spilled out, the gambling, the mounting debts, the lies, I felt my world crumbling around me once again. The accident had left me physically broken, but this revelation threatened to shatter what was left of my spirit. "How could you?" I choked out, tears streaming down my face. "How could you do this to us?" Mark reached out to me, his eyes pleading, but I recoiled from his touch. In that moment, I realized that the road to recovery ahead of me was far longer and more treacherous than I had ever imagined. I stared at Mark, my mind reeling from his confession. The weight of our financial ruin pressed down on me, threatening to crush what little strength I'd regained since the accident. "How much?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's eyes darted away. "Rachel, How? Much?" Each word felt like a dagger in my throat. He sighed, shoulders slumping. "Just over $200,000. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. $200,000? How is that even possible? It got out of hand. I thought I could win it back, make things right before you found out." Rage bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. "Make things right? You've destroyed us, Mark. What about the kids' college funds? Our retirement?" His face hardened. "Don't you think I know that? I've been killing myself trying to fix this while you've been lying around for months." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Lying around? I nearly died. And I've been here, haven't I? Taking care of you, the house, everything. But you haven't exactly been pulling your weight lately, have you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously blaming me for this?" Mark's eyes flashed. "All I'm saying is that if you'd been more attentive, maybe I wouldn't have needed to find other outlets." The slap echoed through the room before I even realized I'd moved. Mark stumbled back, hand to his cheek, shock written across his face. "Get out," I hissed. "Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." He hesitated for a moment, then stormed out of the room. I heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as he peeled out of the driveway. I sank into a chair, my body trembling. How had we come to this? The man I'd loved, the father of my children, reduced to a lying, gambling addict who blamed me for his own failures. The sound of footsteps made me look up. Leah and Caleb stood in the doorway, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. "Mom?" Leah's voice was soft. "We heard shouting. Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. "No, sweetheart, everything is not okay." Over the next hour I explained the situation to my children. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to anger to heartbreak. "What are we going to do?" Caleb asked, his voice small and scared. Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Mark strode in, his face flushed and eyes wild. "Pack your bags," he announced. "We're selling the house." "What?" I stood, ignoring the pain that shot through my still healing body. "You can't be serious." He waved a handful of papers at me. "It's the only way. I've already talked to a realtor. If we sell now, we might be able to cover most of the debt." "Dad, no," Leah protested. "This is our home." Mark's gaze softened as he looked at our children. "I know, sweetie, but we don't have a choice." "The hell we don't," I snapped. "You don't get to make unilateral decisions about our lives anymore, Mark, not after what you've done." His eyes narrowed. "Oh, and what do you suggest? You can barely walk. How exactly do you plan to contribute to fixing this mess?" The words stung, but I refused to let him see how much. "I'll figure something out, but I won't let you destroy our children's lives to cover up your mistakes." Mark's face contorted with anger. He strode towards me, looming over me. "You don't have a choice, Rachel. Unless you've got a secret stash of cash hidden away somewhere. This is happening." As I stared up at him, something inside me snapped. The fear and uncertainty of the past months crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. "Maybe I do," I said, my voice steady. "Maybe I've been planning for this day longer than you think." The look of shock on Mark's face was almost worth everything we'd been through. Almost. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. I smiled, a small, dangerous thing. "Why don't you sit down, dear? We have a lot to discuss." The tension in the room was palpable as Mark stared at me, his face a mix of confusion and anger. "What do you mean? You've been planning for this. What have you been hiding, Rachel?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I'm not the one who's been hiding things, Mark, but we'll get to that. First, let's talk about your brilliant plan to sell our home." Mark's jaw clenched. "It's the only way." "No," I cut him off. "It's not, and I won't let you bully me or our children into this decision." He slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. "Damn it, Rachel, we don't have a choice. Unless you can magically make $200,000 appear, we're selling the house." I saw Leah and Caleb exchange worried glances. My heart ached for them, caught in the middle of this mess. "There's always a choice, Mark," I said, my voice steady. "And I choose not to let your mistakes destroy our family." His eyes narrowed. "Oh, and how exactly do you plan to fix this?" I took a deep breath. "I'll go back to work." The room fell silent. Mark's laugh, when it came, was bitter and mocking. "You? Work? In your condition? Don't be ridiculous, Rachel. You can barely make it up the stairs without help." His words stung, but I refused to let him see how much. "I may not be able to return to teaching right away, but there are other options, online tutoring, for example." Mark scoffed. "That's your big solution? A few hours of tutoring won't even make a dent in what we owe." "It's a start," I insisted, "and it's better than throwing away our children's future." He shook his head, his expression hardening. "No, it's not enough. We're selling the house, and that's final." I saw the moment he made his decision, saw the cruel glint in his eye before he spoke. Unless what?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Mark pulled out a folded document from his pocket, tossing it onto the table between us. "Unless you agree to my terms." With shaking hands, I unfolded the paper. My heart dropped as I read the title, Petition for Divorce. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Oh, I'm dead serious," Mark said, his voice cold. "Here's the deal. You go back to work full-time, contribute every penny to paying off our debt, and I won't file these papers. We stay together, keep the house, and eventually dig ourselves out of this hole. I stared at him, barely recognizing the man I'd married. And if I refuse? His smile was devoid of warmth. Then I file for divorce, we sell the house, and you can figure out how to support yourself on whatever the judge decides to give you. Your choice. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady myself. How had we come to this? How had the man I loved become this cruel, manipulative stranger? Dad, you can't do this! Leah's voice broke through my shock. She reached for the divorce papers, but Mark snatched them away. Stay out of this, Leah, he snapped. This is between your mother and me. The hell it is! Caleb stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. This affects all of us, Dad. You can't just... Enough, Mark roared. This is not up for discussion. Rachel, what's it going to be? Work or divorce? I looked at my children, saw the fear and anger in their eyes. Then I looked at Mark, at the stranger wearing my husband's face. In that moment, something inside me hardened, a resolve I didn't know I possessed. You want an answer? I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Fine, here's my answer. I reached for the divorce papers, ignoring Mark's triumphant smirk, but instead of signing them, I tore them in half, then quarters, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. I choose neither, I said, meeting Mark's shocked gaze. I won't be bullied or manipulated anymore. You want a divorce? File the papers yourself. But know this, I'm done playing by your rules. The look of utter disbelief on Mark's face almost made me laugh. Almost. But as I watched his shock turn to fury, I realized that this was far from over. The battle lines had been drawn, and I had just fired the first shot in what promised to be a long and bitter war. The silence that followed my defiance was deafening. Mark's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. I braced myself for the explosion I knew was coming. You ungrateful bitch, he snarled, taking a menacing step towards me. After everything I've done for you. Dad, stop! Caleb intervened, placing himself between us. This isn't helping anyone. Mark's gaze snapped to our son, his eyes blazing. Stay out of this, Caleb. This is between your mother and me. I saw Leah pull out her phone, her fingers flying over the screen. I'm calling the police, she announced, her voice shaking but determined. No, I said quickly, surprising even myself. No police, not yet. I turned to Mark, steeling myself. You want to know how I plan to fix this mess? Fine, I'll show you. With trembling hands, I reached for my laptop on the nearby table. Every movement sent jolts of pain through my still healing body, but I ignored it. I had a point to prove. Mom, what are you doing? Leah asked, confusion evident in her voice. I managed a small smile. Something I should have done a long time ago. As I logged into my account, I could feel Mark's impatient glare boring into me. If this is some kind of joke, Rachel. It's not a joke. I cut him off, turning the screen towards him. Take a look. Mark's eyes widened as he scanned the page, disbelief etched across his features. What? What is this? My work account, I said, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. I've been tutoring online since I got out of the hospital. The room fell silent as the implications of my revelation sank in. Leah was the first to speak. Mom, why didn't you tell us? I sighed, the weight of my secrets suddenly feeling unbearably heavy. Because I needed to protect myself, to have a safety net in case. I trailed off, glancing at Mark. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. You've been working behind my back? For how long? Long enough, I replied, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. Long enough to know that I can support myself if I need to. Mark's laugh was bitter and mocking. Support yourself? With what? A few $100s from online tutoring? Don't be ridiculous, Rachel. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to reveal. It's not just a few $100s, Mark. I scrolled down the page, revealing my account balance. The gasp that echoed through the room was almost comical. Mark's eyes bulged as he stared at the 5-figure sum displayed on the screen. How is this possible? He stammered. I've been working every spare moment, I explained, my voice growing stronger with each word. While you were out gambling away our future, I was building us a safety net. Or at least, I thought it was for us. Mark's shock quickly gave way to anger. You've been hiding this money while I've been drowning in debt? While I've been killing myself trying to keep us afloat? Killing yourself? I repeated incredulously. You mean gambling away everything we've worked for? He lunged forward, grabbing my arm roughly. That money is mine too. You had no right. Let go of her, Caleb shouted, pulling Mark away from me. As I rubbed my arm, wincing at the pain, I realized that this was the moment, the crossroads I'd been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. You're right about one thing, Mark, I said, my voice eerily calm. This money isn't just mine. It's for our children's future, the future you were willing to gamble away. I turned to Leah and Caleb, their faces a mix of shock, admiration, and fear. Kids, I'm so sorry you had to see all this, but I need you to know that no matter what happens next, I will always be here for you. Then I faced Mark one last time, drawing on a strength I didn't know I possessed. As for you, I think it's time we had a real conversation about our future, or rather, the lack of one. The look of dawning comprehension on Mark's face told me he finally understood. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about freedom, self-respect, and the courage to start over. As I closed my laptop, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I was ready to face it on my own terms. The days following my revelation were a whirlwind of tension and heated discussions. Mark oscillated between rage and desperate attempts at reconciliation, while Leah and Caleb tried their best to mediate. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly braced for the next confrontation. It was on a particularly tense evening that everything came to a head. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Mark stormed in, waving a handful of papers. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, slamming the documents on the counter. I glanced at them, my heart sinking as I recognized the letterhead of our bank. "Where did you get those? Does it matter?" Mark's eyes blazed with fury. "You've been moving money around behind my back, transferring funds to a separate account. Care to explain?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I think you know exactly what it means, Mark." His laugh was bitter. "Oh, I do. It means you've been planning this for a while, haven't you? Squirreling away money, getting ready to leave me high and dry. Can you blame me?" I shot back, my own anger rising. "After everything you've put us through?" Mark's face contorted with rage. He grabbed my arm, yanking me towards him. "Everything I've put us through? I've kept this family afloat for years while you... Let go of her!" Caleb's voice rang out as he rushed into the kitchen, Leah close behind. Mark released me, stepping back as our children positioned themselves between us. The look of shock on their faces broke my heart. "What's going on?" Leah asked, her voice trembling. "We heard shouting." I rubbed my arm, wincing at the pain. "Your father found out about some financial arrangements I've been making." "You mean your escape plan?" Mark spat. Caleb's eyes widened. "Escape plan? Mom, what's he talking about?" I looked at my children, seeing the confusion and fear in their eyes. It was time for the truth, all of it. "I've been preparing for the possibility of leaving your father," I said softly. "I've set up a separate account, been saving money." "You're leaving?" Leah's voice cracked. "But why?" Mark scoffed. "Because she's selfish. She's willing to tear this family apart over a few mistakes." "A few mistakes?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You gambled away our savings, our children's college funds. You lied. You manipulated. You—" "Enough!" Caleb shouted, his face pale. "Just enough, both of you." The kitchen fell silent, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. "Is this really what you want, Rachel?" Mark asked, his voice suddenly quiet. "To throw away 15 years of marriage?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a wave of sadness wash over me. This man who I had once loved so deeply now felt like a stranger. "I don't want to throw anything away, Mark," I said softly. "But I can't keep living like this. The lies, the gambling, the constant fear. It's killing me." "So what, you're just going to leave? Take the kids and run?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not taking anyone anywhere. Leah and Caleb are adults. They can make their own decisions." Our children exchanged glances, the weight of the situation clearly settling on their shoulders. "But you're right about one thing," I continued, my resolve strengthening with each word. "I am leaving. And I think it's time we made it official." The room fell silent as the implications of my words sank in. Mark's face paled, then flushed with anger. "You can't be serious?" he sputtered. "A divorce after everything we've been through?" I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "Yes, Mark. A divorce. It's time we both face the truth. This marriage has been over for a long time. As I watched the shock and disbelief play across Mark's face, I realized that this was it, the point of no return. But instead of fear, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. "Mom," Leah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Are you sure about this?" I turned to my children, seeing the mix of emotions in their eyes. "I am," I said softly. "I know this is hard, and I'm so sorry you're caught in the middle. But I need to do this, for all of us." As I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of my crumbling marriage, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Hope for a future free from lies and manipulation. Hope for a chance to rediscover who I was without Mark's shadow looming over me. The decision was made. Now I just had to find the strength to see it through. The day I filed for divorce felt surreal. As I stood outside the courthouse, divorce papers clutched in my trembling hands, a mix of emotions washed over me: relief, fear, and a strange sense of exhilaration. "Mom?" Leah's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "Are you okay?" I managed a small smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just processing." Caleb squeezed my shoulder. "We're proud of you, Mom. It couldn't have been easy." Their support meant everything, but I couldn't shake the nagging worry about what Mark would do when he found out. I didn't have to wait long to find out. My phone buzzed incessantly as we drove home. Mark's name flashed on the screen, along with a barrage of text messages. I ignored them all. As we pulled into the driveway, my heart sank. Mark's car was parked haphazardly on the lawn, and I could see him pacing on the porch. "Maybe we should go somewhere else," Leah suggested, her voice tight with concern. I shook my head. "No, this is our home. We're not running away." Mark's face was a mask of fury as we approached. "How dare you?" he snarled, waving a copy of the divorce papers. "After everything I've done for this family, you go behind my back and file for divorce?" "Dad, calm down." Caleb stepped between us, his voice steady but tense. Mark shoved him aside. "Stay out of this, Caleb. This is between your mother and me." "No, it's not," I said, finding strength in my children's presence. "This affects all of us, Mark, and it's long overdue." His laugh was bitter and mocking. "Oh, is that so? And how exactly do you plan to support yourself, Rachel? With your little online tutoring gig?" I stood my ground, meeting his gaze. "That's none of your concern anymore." Something dangerous flashed in Mark's eyes. "Oh, but it is. You see, I've been doing some digging of my own, and I know all about your secret savings account." My blood ran cold. How had he found out? "That money is as much mine as it is yours," Mark continued, his voice low and menacing. "And I intend to get my share." "You can't," I protested. "That money is for the kids' future, for what?" Mark interrupted. "Your escape plan? Well, guess what, Rachel? I'm not letting you off that easy. If you want this divorce, fine. But I'll make damn sure you don't walk away with a penny more than you deserve." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I felt my resolve wavering, the fear of a prolonged legal battle threatening to overwhelm me. "You can't intimidate me anymore, Mark," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I've made my decision." His face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, Rachel. I'll make sure of it." As Mark stormed off, peeling out of the driveway with a screech of tires, I felt my knees go weak. Leah and Caleb rushed to support me, guiding me into the house. "Mom, what did Dad mean about your savings account?" Leah asked, her voice trembling. I sank onto the couch, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I've been saving money, more than I let on. I wanted to make sure we'd be okay if you left Dad," Caleb finished, his expression unreadable. I nodded, tears welling up. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to drag you into this mess." Leah took my hand. "We're already in it, Mom, and we're with you no matter what." Their support should have been comforting, but all I could think about was Mark's threat. If he contested the divorce, if he went after my savings, everything I'd worked for could be lost. As I sat there, surrounded by my children but feeling more alone than ever, I realized that the real battle was just beginning. Mark wouldn't go down without a fight, and I had to be prepared for whatever he might throw at me. The freedom I'd tasted when I filed those divorce papers now felt like a distant dream, but I couldn't give up now. Not when I'd come so far. With a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders. "We need a plan," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Mark's not going to make this easy, but I'm not backing down. Not this time." As Leah and Caleb nodded in agreement, I felt a flicker of hope. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in years, I was ready to fight for my future, and for the future of my children. The weeks following my divorce filing were a blur of legal meetings and heated arguments. Mark had made good on his threat, contesting every aspect of our separation, but I was done being a victim. I had a plan, one that would secure my future and that of our children. As I sat in my lawyer's office, listening to her outline Mark's latest demands, I felt a surge of determination. "He wants half of everything, Rachel," she said, her tone grave, "including your savings." I took a deep breath. "Let him try. I have one last card to play." My lawyer raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what might that be?" I smiled, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. "I'm buying the house." Her eyes widened. "The family home? But how?" "I've been saving more than Mark knows," I explained. "Enough to make a substantial down payment. I've already spoken to the bank." As I left the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the realtor. "Offer accepted. Congratulations." My heart raced. It was really happening. I drove home, my mind whirling with possibilities. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Mark's car parked out front. My stomach clenched, but I refused to let fear take over. Inside, I found Mark in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. Leah and Caleb were there too, their faces tense. "Well, well." Mark sneered as I entered. "If it isn't the woman of the hour, come to beg for mercy." I stood tall, meeting his gaze. "Actually, I came to make you an offer." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "An offer? This should be good." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm buying the house, Mark. It's a done deal." The room fell silent. Mark's face contorted in disbelief, then rage. "You what? How dare you?" "I dare because it's my right," I interrupted, my voice steady. "This home is for our children, not a bargaining chip in your games." Mark lunged forward, his face inches from mine. "You think you can just take everything from me? I'll fight you every step of the way. You'll what?" I challenged. "Gamble away what little you have left? Face it, Mark, it's over." His hand raised, and for a moment I thought he might strike me. But Caleb was there in an instant, grabbing his father's arm. "Don't even think about it, Dad," he growled. Mark wrenched his arm free, his eyes wild. "You're all against me, aren't you? My own family turning their backs on me." "We didn't turn our backs on you," Leah said softly. "You pushed us away." I saw the pain in my children's eyes and it broke my heart, but I had to stay strong. For all of us. "Here's the deal, Mark," I said, pulling out an envelope. "This is a settlement offer. It's not much, but it's fair. Take it, and you can walk away without any more legal battles." He snatched the envelope, tearing it open. As he read, his face paled. This is nothing, after everything I've done for this family." "Everything you've done?" I repeated incredulously. "You mean lying, gambling, manipulating?" "No, Mark, this is more than you deserve." For a moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved, vulnerable, lost, but it was quickly replaced by cold fury. "You'll regret this, Rachel," he hissed. "I'll make sure of it." As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt my knees go weak. Leah and Caleb rushed to my side, supporting me. "Mom, are you okay?" Leah asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I'm fine. It's really over, isn't it?" Caleb squeezed my hand. "Yeah, Mom, it is, and we're so proud of you." As we stood there, in the home that was now truly ours, I felt a mix of emotions washing over me. Relief, fear, hope. I knew Mark's threat wasn't empty. He would fight, tooth and nail, to make this difficult for me. But looking at my children, seeing their strength and support, I knew I could face whatever came next. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. As night fell, I sat on the porch, looking out at the neighborhood I'd fought so hard to keep. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new challenges. But tonight, I allowed myself to savor this small victory. The war wasn't over, but I had won an important battle, and I was ready for whatever came next. The day of the final court hearing arrived, a culmination of months of legal battles and emotional turmoil. As I stood outside the courthouse, smoothing down my suit, I felt a strange calm wash over me. Whatever happened today, I was ready to face it. "Mom?" Leah's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She and Caleb stood beside me, their faces a mix of concern and determination. "Are you ready?" I nodded, drawing strength from their presence. "As ready as I'll ever be." Inside, the courtroom was a buzz of activity. My lawyer offered a reassuring smile as I took my seat. And then there was Mark, looking haggard and defeated, but with a glint of defiance in his eyes that made my stomach churn. As the judge entered and proceedings began, I found myself drifting, remembering the journey that had brought me here. The accident, the lies, the moment I decided to take control of my life. It all seemed so distant now, yet the emotions were still raw. My lawyer's voice snapped me back to reality. Your Honor, my client has provided extensive evidence of Mr. Thompson's gambling addiction and financial mismanagement. We believe the settlement offer is more than fair. Mark's lawyer countered, spinning tales of my supposed deceit and hidden assets. But I held my ground, my gaze steady as the judge considered both sides. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge spoke. Having reviewed all the evidence, I find in favor of Mrs. Thompson. The settlement will proceed as outlined, with Mrs. Thompson retaining full ownership of the family home. A collective gasp filled the room. I sat stunned as the reality of the moment sank in. We had won. It was over. Mark's anguished cry broke through my daze. This is ridiculous. She's taken everything from me. As he lunged towards me, security intervened, restraining him. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw the man I once loved, now a stranger consumed by bitterness and rage. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my children and my lawyer, the full weight of what had transpired hit me. Tears streamed down my face, tears of relief, of grief for the life I'd lost, and of hope for the future I'd fought so hard to secure. Mom, you did it, Caleb said, pulling me into a tight hug. It's really over. Leah joined the embrace, her voice thick with emotion. We're so proud of you, Mom. You've shown us what real strength looks like. As we drove home, to my home, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The house, once a symbol of my captivity, now represented freedom and new beginnings. That evening, as I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the fear, the moments of doubt, they had all led to this moment of peace. Leah joined me, handing me a steaming mug of tea. How are you feeling, Mom? I smiled, genuinely and without reservation. Free, I replied, and a little scared, but mostly I feel hopeful. She squeezed my hand. You know, watching you stand up for yourself, fight for what's right, it's inspired me. I've decided to switch my major to law. I want to help people the way your lawyer helped you. My heart swelled with pride. Oh, Leah, you'll be amazing. Caleb appeared in the doorway. Room for one more? As my children settled on either side of me, I felt a surge of love and gratitude. We had weathered the storm together and come out stronger on the other side. You know, Caleb said thoughtfully, I've been thinking about my future too. Seeing how hard you worked, Mom, how you built something for yourself even when everything seemed hopeless, it's made me realize I want to start my own business. Be my own boss, like you. I hugged them both close, marveling at the incredible young adults they had become. I'm so proud of both of you, and I want you to know, no matter what challenges you face, you can overcome them. We're proof of that. As night fell, wrapping us in its gentle embrace, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead would have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. I had my freedom, my home, and most importantly, the love and support of my children. The future, once a source of dread, now held endless possibilities, and I was ready to embrace every one of them.